The fourth source is the qiyas. And the qiyas, or analogy, which is, it means exactly what the word indicates, is that the scholars, they would take a ruling which was based on one of the previous three sources, and they would make an analogy with it to another case which was not mentioned in those original three sources.
Well, and then we have the very famous example of that, to put the audience in perspective, is alcohol being forbidden, and from that we know we don't do drugs either.
Yes, exactly. That's probably the most simple and prevalent example in terms of that it affects us in daily life.
Yes.
And the scholars, this is probably one of the major areas where they diverged in the branches of the fiqh, because they used the qiyas in different ways, and also they had limits to the qiyas, or an expansion of the qiyas also in a different scope. And what's amazing is that all of them, they did feel the validity of the principle, but at the same time they felt that the use of it in a proper manner, in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah, would be in different ways. And this shows you something else, which is that in our deen, although it is true that we must stick very, very closely to the Quran and Sunnah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does expect us to use our intellectual faculties to understand His intent in His revelations.
Yes.
And this is something that is important, because there are, unfortunately, some people in our contemporary times who feel that the use of the mind in extracting law from the Quran and Sunnah is not correct. And that is something which is absolutely alien to this religion. All the scholars of the past used their intellect.
Well, the problem with that, even I remember one sheikh, when he was being asked about this very issue, he was saying that even if you want to understand the Quran, you have to use your mind.
Yes.
There's even something like that everybody agrees on as a source, but it's not just as simple as spitting out an ayah and then everybody knows.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and unfortunately, once again, I'm going to have to take a break there.
Okay.
But we can pick up where you left off in the next segment, inshallah. So everybody don't go away, so we can continue hearing about these very essential usul in our lives.
If the way you dress expresses how you feel, and your dress speaks about you, then your dress not only makes a statement, but it is an important part of your identity. These are American Muslim women. Their dress reflects their faith and their belief in modesty. This message has been brought to you by your American Muslim neighbors.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the Islamic Media Foundation.
Welcome back, everyone, to the IBN Book Review. I'm your host, Chantal Carnes, and with me is this week's co-host, Imam Badawi. We were continuing the process of reviewing the book The Four Imams by Muhammad Abu Zahra, and then from that we were discussing, as he mentions in his book The Usul, that the four Imams were deriving their fiqh from. So, Imam, please continue for us.
The other usul that come after the Quran and the Sunnah and the Ijma' and Qiyas, they are also matters which there was some disagreement about, but again, the disagreements had a very, very grounded basis in the Quran and Sunnah. Yes. But one thing that I'd like to mention from the fiqh of the Malikis in particular, but not to say that it wasn't used by the other Imams, is the fiqh of masalih.
Oh yeah, he mentions that in his book, how it was almost an overriding fundamental principle of the madhab.
Yes, yes.
And I think Ash-Shatibi, actually, if anybody's interested in hearing more about that, there's a book called Ash-Shatibi's Philosophy of Islamic Law, which Ash-Shatibi was Maliki.
Yes.
He wrote in Muwafiqat, and he talks about this principle.
Yes, yes. And that's a very, very deep, high-level book, mashallah. Yeah. Has it been translated?
The Muwafiqat has not, but the work that's in Ash-Shatibi's Philosophy of Islamic Law, I think for the student of knowledge, it's not too heavy to go through, actually. It doesn't do al-Muwafiqat itself, which that is very much more difficult, but it instead kind of summarizes it a little bit and gives some background history also.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so getting back to the fiqh of masalih, basically what the principle was is that behind any ruling there is the principle that the ruling is for the purpose of bringing about benefit and averting harm. And this is why, in many cases, the Malikis were dissatisfied with the qiyas, with the analogy that would come, the strict analogy that is, that would come from, the Quran or the Sunnah based on an issue that had not occurred.
Right.
So they found that in some cases, if you followed the strict qiyas, the ruling would be of difficulty upon people, or it wouldn't fulfill the spirit of the Sharia.
Yeah.
And so in these cases, they would exchange the qiyas ruling for something called istihsan.
Yes.
Which means that they favored another ruling which has more benefit over the ruling of the qiyas. And this is something which is not specific just to the Maliki mazhab, although they excelled in it more than others. But the reason I'm bringing this point up is that to show how beautiful our Sharia is, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He legislated these rules, He legislated them with the spirit that He is telling human beings what is in their own interest and what is best for them. And He is prohibiting them from that which is of harm to them. And therefore, every Muslim who has this understanding should recognize that when they follow the legislations of Allah, not only are they doing it as a way of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also they are doing it because they know that's the best way of life. That to follow these guidelines, you will attain to perfection in this world and in Akhirah.
Well, and actually that's one reason why I think this principle has a lot of validity for what Muslims are going through nowadays, because even there are a lot of issues that are coming that even there isn't a qiyas, even if you wanted to find one.
Yes.
So I think that this principle of maslaha is something that probably our modern-day ulama are and will continue to develop further, because the complexity has developed a need for it. And this is what, not to bring up a Shatibi again, but some of the issues that were going in his modern day with contracts, he found that if you wanted to do a qiyas, you'd have to break up a contract in like 4 or 5 parts and make 4 or 5 analogies. And certainly we're facing that these days, where there isn't necessarily that clear type of textual basis for us to rule on, and I say us, I mean the ulama, that they can, and they are in fact using this principle to help Muslims go through these troublesome times.
Absolutely. And I can give a very, very real-life example of that, and that is the issue of buying a house on mortgage.
Oh, yes.
I know firsthand that when I have informed some sisters about the fact that some scholars have made it permissible in the West, under certain circumstances, having preconditions to the permissibility of allowing what is normally haram.
Right.
It is normally haram to buy a house on mortgage, but because of certain masalih, which and to avert the harm of having a huge group of Muslims living in the West and not even having homes, in a sense, the scholars have ruled that in certain cases, and of course everyone who's listening to this program should refer to that original fatwa before taking what I'm saying,
right?
That in certain cases it is permissible because of the maslaha and to remove the hardship. Now, many Muslims, they may hear about this fatwa and they say, no, how could the scholars make something that is haram halal? But it's because they don't understand the deep consequences of the Sharia and the spirit and the law as it is extracted from the Quran and Sunnah.
Well, and I would even say that also, to some extent, applies to this whole issue of voting. There are a lot of Muslims who find voting very abhorrent, but then when you look at the overall benefit, it's such a strong benefit for the community to participate, and to not participate causes us so much harm.
Yes.
So unfortunately, and it really breaks my heart to end it there, but I do hope that everybody who's listening will go out and get this book. I'll tell everyone in advance that it might be one of your more expensive books, but it's definitely a worthwhile
Absolutely worth it. I agree with you.
Yeah, every penny. So inshallah, if we can just finish up with a very quick review of the book. First of all, content. I think we both agree at this point it's a definite thumbs up, right?
A+.
Yeah, A+. Mm-hmm. For publishing quality, I have to say I did notice some typos.
Yes, I did also.
Like I think Fath Bari, they said it was the commentary of Sahih Muslim, which, unless you know something I don't, I think it was for Al-Bukhari.
Yes.
And a couple of little things like that, now being spelt like no and those sorts of things. So I have to just, to encourage them to push up, I would give them a thumbs down just in terms of the typos. Mm-hmm. That really got it for me. Now, what did you think in terms of publishing quality?
I agree with you that there were some typos. Alhamdulillah, in most cases, they were not anything that changed the meaning of what the author was trying to get across.
Right.
However, like you said, there, in some cases like that mistake about Sahih Muslim, it should be fixed.
Yes.
But the other thing that I really liked about the book is that they could have made it a lot thinner, but with smaller print. And I really dislike it when books have very small print.
Yeah, I find it easier to read in this way.
Yes, when it was large print, it was so easy to skim the page and find exactly what you're looking for.
That's very true.
Yes,
very true.
So this is something that if a publisher is listening, I hope that they take this advice that they shouldn't decrease the size just to make the book smaller.
Yeah, that's true. I just give them a hard time over the typos because we need to get over that as a community. So thank you very much, Iman, for coming. We're going to have to conclude there. If anybody has any suggestions or comments or they would like to suggest a book for review, please email us at bookreview@ibn.net. Jazakumullah khair wa assalamu alaikum.